Have you ever witnessed a courtroom scene where the defendant was the one who left the entire room stunned into silence? If not, Jade Lawson's story might just make you rethink everything you thought you knew about justice and talent. That morning, the Brooklyn District Court was packed. No one quite understood why such a seemingly minor trial had drawn so much attention. At the center of the stifling room, thick with judging eyes and murmuring voices, stood a young black woman. She wore faded sneakers, simple jeans, and a face that still held traces of youth. And yet, she was the focus of every doubtful glance. Judge Roland West, known for his strictness and zero tolerance, looked at her with a skeptical gaze tinged with condescension. "Do you understand the charges against you?" he asked, enunciating each word slowly, as if speaking to a child lost in a world of grown-ups. Jade didn't look away. She simply nodded, her bright eyes calm but unwavering. From the gallery, muffled laughter echoed. Who could possibly take a teenage girl defending herself seriously? But what no one realized, not even Judge West, was that Jade hadn't come to beg for mercy. She came to reveal the truth. And step by step, she would make sure every single person in that room heard it. Because Jade Lawson was no ordinary defendant. She had come prepared to do what no one else dared. And today, the truth was about to be rewritten. Jade Lawson stood in the middle of the courtroom like a small flame in a sea of cold indifference. She didn't show fear, nor did she seem defiant. Her calmness, in fact, only seemed to irritate Judge Roland West further. Draped in a heavy black robe that emphasized his imposing frame, he peered at her over his glasses, his gaze sharp with judgment. "Do you think this is some kind of after-school debate club?" he asked. His voice laced with sarcasm and barely concealed impatience. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Jade, waiting to see the inevitable signs of nervousness. The faltering of a young girl clearly out of her depth. But Jade didn't flinch. She stood tall, her voice steady and composed, as if every word had been carefully rehearsed. "I fully understand the charges, Your Honor." The statement was simple, but firm, enough to prompt a few sideways glances among the spectators. Judge West raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a smirk as if he couldn't quite believe what he'd heard. "Fully understand?" he repeated, this time with overt mockery. "And you think you can defend yourself in a serious criminal trial?" Jade remained silent for a brief moment, then gave a slight, deliberate nod. Her eyes no longer reflected the fear of a defendant. They now held the resolve of someone waiting for the chance to prove everyone wrong. From the benches in the back, faint chuckles rippled through the crowd. A cluster of seasoned attorneys exchanged amused glances, clearly entertained by what they saw as a misguided performance by a young woman playing lawyer for a day. To them, Jade was little more than a distraction from their routine caseload. But Jade let them laugh. She knew the truth didn't need theatrics, it only needed to be spoken at the right moment. And that moment was fast approaching. Every snide comment, every dismissive stare only sharpened her resolve. She hadn't come to court to be pitied. She had come to force the world to see her in a different light. The moment Prosecutor Grant Miller rose to speak, his face radiating confidence, no one in the courtroom doubted that the case would soon be wrapped up. Miller was the textbook prosecutor, eloquent, razor-sharp in his delivery, and most of all, unwavering in the belief that no one, especially not a young girl like Jade, could possibly stand in his way. "Your Honor," Miller began, his voice commanding the room. "This is a straightforward case." The defendant was apprehended at the scene, along with physical evidence clearly tying her to the incident. He paced past the defense table without sparing Jade a glance, as though her presence was too insignificant to acknowledge. "She was found with a bag containing sensitive documents. This is not a matter of interpretation. It is an undeniable fact." But before he could go further, Jade's voice rang out, calm but unmistakably firm. "Objection." The room froze. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. Had they really heard that right? A young girl objecting to a seasoned prosecutor? "You're objecting?" Judge West asked, nearly chuckling. "Do you even understand what that means?" Without missing a beat, Jade replied, "I understand perfectly. The prosecutor is making assumptions unsupported by concrete evidence. What he's presenting is speculation, not legal fact." Her words sliced clean through Miller's momentum. He paused mid-sentence, taken aback, not just by her nerve, but because she was right. According to legal protocol, Unsubstantiated claims framed as fact can indeed be ruled inadmissible. A murmur spread through the courtroom. People were beginning to look at her differently. Jade hadn't faltered in front of a veteran prosecutor. On the contrary, she was wielding the law itself like a sharpened shield, blocking every advance. Grant Miller scrambled to recover. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Jade's objection had shifted the energy in the room. This was no longer a simple, open and shut trial. Something bigger had taken root, an unexpected turn led by a young woman who clearly knew exactly what she was doing. While Prosecutor Miller was still fumbling to regroup after Jade's earlier objection, she calmly stepped toward her defense table. With measured precision, she pulled out a thick stack of papers, each page neatly organized, highlighted, and annotated. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. The girl they had dismissed as naive and inexperienced was suddenly someone they couldn't afford to ignore. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I would like to submit an analysis of the evidence presented by the prosecution." She handed the packet to the court clerk without once breaking eye contact with Judge Roland West. The judge took the documents, skepticism still evident on his face. But as he flipped through the pages, his expression began to change. The materials were meticulously prepared. Each argument was backed by specific statutes and case law. One section broke down procedural flaws in the evidence collection, highlighting a violation of the chain of custody. Another pointed out discrepancies in a surveillance video the prosecution had deemed critical to the case. "You prepared this yourself?" he asked, for the first time sounding unsure. "Yes, Your Honor. I reviewed the case files and built my arguments using applicable legal texts," Jade replied. Even Prosecutor Miller now looked visibly unsettled. He glanced at the documents, then back at Jade, like he was seeing her for the first time. "This can't be yours," he said, his voice edged with disbelief and irritation. You don't have the background to put this together. Not everyone is born with the benefit of being believed." "Mr. Miller," Jade answered, "but I don't need belief. I need the truth on my side." A quiet ripple passed through the room. Her words carried weight, not just because of their truth, but because of the conviction behind them. In a world where prejudice so often overshadows justice, Jade had flipped the narrative. She wasn't just holding her ground, she was taking the courtroom to school. From that moment on, Jade Lawson was no longer just a defendant. She became the catalyst forcing an entire system to re-examine its assumptions. A heavy silence settled over the courtroom after Jade finished presenting her case. Her sharp reasoning, precise citations, and meticulously crafted analysis left those who had mocked her now speechless. But Judge Roland West couldn't shake his skepticism. He folded the packet of documents and looked directly at her. "I'll ask you one more time. Lawson, how could a young girl prepare legal work of this caliber?" Jade lifted her chin, her gaze unwavering. "Because I'm not just a defendant, Your Honor. I'm a lawyer." The words thundered through the room like a bolt from a clear sky. A collective gasp swept across the courtroom. Some mouths dropped open. Prosecutor Grant Miller shot to his feet, slamming his palm on the table. "Impossible. You're no lawyer, you're just a kid." Jade didn't need to raise her voice. She simply replied, calmly and clearly, "I passed the New York State bar exam last year, at the age of 18. I am a licensed attorney, legally registered to practice. You can look me up, Jade Lawson. Registration number New York 19482. Judge West glanced at his clerk. No instructions were needed. The clerk was already typing. After a brief pause, he looked up. "Your Honor, she's telling the truth. Jade Lawson is a licensed attorney in the state of New York." A burst of murmurs erupted from the back of the room. Some whispered in disbelief. Others nodded in quiet recognition. As for Miller, he stood frozen, his face flushed with embarrassment. He had underestimated an opponent he hadn't thought worth taking seriously, and now he was losing to her. Judge West slowly sat up straighter. His demeanor noticeably changed. The dismissiveness in his eyes had vanished. "You certainly know how to surprise a courtroom, Lawson," he said softly. "I've never seen anything quite like this." Jade offered a small, respectful nod. "I didn't come to surprise anyone. I came to uphold justice." And in that moment, no one in the courtroom dared to see her as just a girl again. Jade Lawson had turned the tables, not with force, but with intellect and undeniable courage. The revelation of Jade Lawson's true identity had already sent shockwaves through the courtroom, but she wasn't done. She hadn't come just to be recognized as a lawyer. She came to prove that this trial should never have happened in the first place. And one by one, she began dismantling the false narrative that the prosecution had so carefully constructed. "Let's begin with Exhibit B," Jade said, stepping confidently into the center of the courtroom. Her voice rang with clarity and authority. "The surveillance footage that the prosecution claims places me at the scene. Has anyone noticed that the video has no timestamp? And that the origin of the file has never been authenticated?" Judge West immediately turned to Prosecutor Grant Miller, his tone heavy. "Is that true, Miller?" Miller faltered, clearly scrambling for a response. "We believe the video is admissible. Belief is not a legal standard." Jade cut in sharply. "I have a digital forensics report from a certified expert. It identifies data inconsistencies and confirms the file's chain of custody was broken. If that video cannot be properly verified, it must be excluded." She handed the report to the clerk, who passed it up to the bench. Judge West skimmed through it, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. "Chain of custody violations, no source verification. This is concerning." Before the room could recover, Jade pressed on. "Now Exhibit D, the witness statement. I was interrogated for hours without legal representation present, even though I was a minor at the time. That's a direct violation of federal law. You didn't ask for a lawyer," Miller offered weakly. "I didn't have to," Jade replied, her voice calm but firm. "The law clearly states that minors are entitled to legal representation by default. Without it, the statement is inadmissible." The room fell into stunned silence. Judge West leaned back, eyes scanning from Jade to Miller, then down to the files in front of him. Finally, he raised his gavel and brought it down with a sharp thud. "I am ordering both pieces of evidence, the video and the statement, excluded. Both violate fundamental legal procedures." Miller sank into his seat, visibly defeated. At that moment, there was no more doubt. Jade Lawson had done more than clear her name. She had forced the entire system to confront its own flaws. And with every word she spoke, she wasn't just defending herself, she was rewriting the very definition of justice. When the final strike of the gavel echoed through the courtroom, signaling the dismissal of all charges, Jade Lawson didn't smile in triumph. She simply bowed her head, gathered her papers, and stepped down from the defense podium, leaving behind a room frozen in stunned silence. Those who had laughed now averted their eyes. Those who had doubted her now nodded in quiet recognition. And at the center of it all, Jade remained the same, composed, resolute, and guided by reason rather than emotion. Outside the courthouse, the late afternoon sun spilled across the wide steps. A reporter rushed forward, microphone raised. "Jade Lawson, how did you manage to turn the case around when everyone seemed to be against you?" She paused, meeting the camera's gaze directly. "There's no secret," she replied firmly. "I believed in the law. And I believed the truth deserved someone willing to stand up for it. Age, skin color, or background doesn't determine your right to speak, courage and preparation do."